AbleGamers has launched a new website in the interest of giving game developers access to more information on how to make their games more accessible through community collaboration. The website, Accessible.Games, features what AbleGamers calls the accessible player experience, Apex portal as well as the player panels program the organization launched a few years back. It's a useful tool for developers that offers a solid starting point for creating games that are accessible to a wider variety of players right out of the box, and one that comes with a wealth of information on a variety of accessibility considerations. The Apex portal offers depth examples of different design problems, suggestions for how to approach those issues, and examples of the pattern in action. Right now that section includes over 20 different design patterns, covering topics like moderation, game interfaces, and control schemes. And AbleGamers says that those resources will continue to evolve. The other side of Accessible.Games aims to connect players with disabilities to game developers seeking input on accessibility features in their own games. Devs can find information on how to submit a project for that program, as all of the information from the Apex portal on AbleGamers' new site. While there are no hard set rules to abide by in the world of game development, there are certainly a few unspoken norms to follow when making sure a game is playable and hopefully enjoyable outside of making sure their games can run. What are some game development rules developers actually live by? Richard Rouse III, developer behind the upcoming game The Church in the Darkness, sought to answer that question and prompted his fellow game makers. What's their personal rule of thumb when it comes to game dev? Warren Spector, best known for The Sims, chimed in first, noting that devs should never judge the player. Let players solve problems the way they want to, not the way you require them to. He continues, do not predetermine what's good and bad for them. Creative director of Woodfire Gamasutra Jeff followed up, explaining that a player's intuition that something wrong is usually right, but their solution to fixing the problem is usually wrong. The player's feeling that something is wrong is always correct, but their solution to fix the problem rarely is. All silos of technical work said that no matter how detailed designs are at a mechanical level, they will almost never work in practice. Iteration is key. Not a single design, mechanical level, will ever work straight from the paper phase, no matter how much it is detailed. Allocate time to iterate, the more the better it eventually will become. Oh, and do not forget to iterate again. Design director at Crystal Dynamics, Wilker Slade, offered a few of his personal rules ranging from tuning variables to setting up but encouraged other devs to keep track of why certain things were cut from a game. Keep notice of why you cut things. Some number of months in the future it'll sound like a good idea again. Make sure the reason you cut it in the first place is not still valid. Other helpful rules were offered in the Twitter thread as well, like paying close attention to playtesters or knowing what constraints there are, whether technical, financial, etc., before prototyping. Interested developers can check out the entire thread here to read through all the responses. It's well worth taking a quick look. Game Design Deep Dive is an ongoing Gamasutra series with the goal of shedding light on specific design features or mechanics within a video game, in order to show how seemingly simple, fundamental design decisions are not really that simple at all. Check out earlier installments, including the action-based RPG BATTLESIMUNDEOTALE, using a real human skull for the audio inside, and the challenge of creating a VR FPS in Space Pirate Trainer. I am broke condoring of husband and wife team brain, and I acted as artist, writer, and designer on our latest project, Berlin Man at Sea. Before games, I was a freelance graphic designer and web developer. My husband David and I did occasional creative projects together, like short films, until we finally stumbled onto the idea of making a game. We started developing our first, a tiny point-and-click adventure called Games. In 2012, while working on Games, we gradually began to realize just how young and still undiscovered this medium is, and that through it storytelling could be pushed in so many new ways. That excitement carried us into a second project, Berlin Man at Sea, which we released just over a month ago. Berlin Man at Sea is constructed as a story-building game. In it, branching scenes combine to form a variable tale with a single, overarching theme. With each session, the player returns from one journey to set sail again, uncovering new paths for a series of kindred, but distinct adventures. Of the many elements of folklore that help to establish what we describe as a folktale adventure, 3 contributed most to the design of Berlin Man at Sea: length, tone, and moral. Designing for folktale length game is a branching narrative with a short play cycle. Designing for folktale tone put the player in the role of storyteller, one step removed from our protagonists. But here we ran into a complication. How could the game present a cohesive moral tale when the tale itself is of the player's choosing? Our solution was to structure the story in a way that both beginning and end were consistent, with the player's influence shaping all events in the middle of the story in a way that developed a single theme. Berlin Man at Sea was always a game about adventure, but it took us about a year on the large-scale adventure of our own to learn what exactly we wanted to say about it. Ultimately, what it wanted to say to us, one of my earliest notes on the game, dated a full year before we even began development, describes it as a type of interactive adventure with a moral, drawing from Scandinavian folklore. While this is a perfectly accurate description of the game in its final state, we continue to explore what form that would take for the next 2 years. We began with a far more traditional branching narrative in mind. Dialogue choices would carry the player through a series of trials and back, culminating in a lesson about choices made along the way, but we soon abandoned this direction. Drawn more to the idea of using playful interaction to advance the narrative, with a sort of Windows-like aspect of discovery that would set events into motion. With this in mind, we began to view the player character as another of the folkloric creatures in the game, and one being with limited influence. As such, a player could direct the protagonist's attention by interacting with the environment without changing their perspective. The characters might then react to this situational change in a way that moves the story forward. Once we established this framework, we began to work out what sort of story we wanted to tell within it. We had chosen early on to set the story in early 20th century Scandinavia, so I began to research the folklore of that region and consider what sort of moral tale we wanted to tell. But I soon learned that each time I held too rigidly to a chosen theme, the resulting narrative felt forced. I tried to write a story to change minds, in which the player was always wrong. I tried to write a story that pretended to be what it was not, and finally, it occurred to me that it's actually not fun to be taught a lesson. What makes that ending satisfying is that it neatly puts into words something nameless you did already begin to discover for yourself. So I began to write instead, with the loose idea to explore the nature of adventure myself, rather than approach it as the knowledgeable party. Looking back, this does seem the obvious route for a story about the unknown. But letting go of intent is scary to do. Having set theme aside for the moment, I still had the rough concept for a journey involving encounters with various creatures from Scandinavian folklore, all taking place at sea.